Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. As we take on this morning the Talmud, we're inching our way through the study of the fourth chapter of Tractate Brachos in the Talmud. We are on page 297 in the Black Book, and we're learning today about the laws of prayer. 297. We're learning about the laws of prayer. You know, prayer is an amazing opportunity which is underrated. One of the members of our congregation here one time, he was a morning minyan. He's sitting here with us today, and he made a prayer to God, a public prayer. He needed two good men for the minyan. Not 3 or 4 minutes later, two air conditioning guys walked in. I looked at him and I said, Rob, you should have been more specific with your prayer. You should have said two Jewish men. So we had two air conditioning guys, but it wasn't, that was quick. That was quick return on the request there, but it wasn't exactly what we needed. And I think I felt this the other day as well, that I also lodged the prayer, just like you said. I lodged the prayer also, and I feel that it was answered, but in a very, very intense way, like a very painful way. And I realized that the challenge that arose was actually the beginning of the salvation. But it's God's way of doing business, I think. So I hope. Anyway, so that's what's going on. Prayer is very powerful. And I want you to realize that no other creation has the ability to communicate directly with the CEO. Think about that. I mean, think about a soldier in the army, a soldier in the IDF. Can a soldier in the IDF speak directly to the prime minister, to the commander in chief, to the general? I don't think so. I don't think you can. There's no like internal WhatsApp service where you can send a message direct, right? But as Jewish people, God has created millions and billions and billions of ants and of cedar trees and of butterflies and of silkworms and all sorts of like trillions of creations, uncountable numbers of creations. There's only one creation that he endowed with the wisdom and the capacity to communicate with God, to communicate at all. And who is that? That's the human being. Now, of the human race, God has chosen one nation as his chosen people. Now, this is not a racist thing, because if you ever got married, then it's exactly the same thing as the chosen people. Or even if you have parents, and I'm going to safely assume that every person around this class here has parents, that means they chose each other. So there's nothing to be embarrassed of by saying we're the chosen people. Just like your mother chose your father and your father chose your mother, it's not saying, ooh, your mother thinks that all men are evil. That's not true. It just means that your mother chose your father. That's what it means. And vice versa. Same thing. God chose the Jewish people, just like a marriage. And we've got to act chosen instead of apologizing for it, right? Imagine a woman is chosen by her husband. They're getting married. And people ask her, so you excited for the wedding? Nah, I'm not chosen. Not really chosen. I'm not really going to the... Stop apologizing. Stop acting like a buffoon and start behaving like a bride. You're chosen. Of course you're chosen. So stop apologizing for it. How do you explain divorce? Oh, you're asking me how to explain divorce? Sure. Divorce...
Then it was the wrong choice. Right.
You thought it was for sure. And what's wrong? What's wrong with having the wrong choice? You'll never succeed unless you're willing to try. You'll never succeed unless you're willing to fail. I think as human beings, we have to recognize the fact that we are mortal. We are, limited. We are flawed. My daughter was asking me a question. She wanted to know, why can't we in our culture date boys? Why can't religious girls and boys date each other in their teenage?
I don't know.
Good question, right? Good question. So I said to her, look, you're not, in your teenage, you're not advanced enough emotionally to be able to know what you're looking for. You're not advanced enough emotionally to be aware of who you are to be able to be ready to meet your soulmate. Right? Right now, what motivates you is Xbox or, some childish interest. And therefore, your ability to seek out and find a partner is going to be limited to your current immature state. Now, if you're dating for recreational purposes, that certainly is not going to aid your spiritual growth or ability to mature, because what's going to happen is you're gonna connect with someone else, and now you're gonna have this like covenant with each other. You're gonna be committed to each other. But if you allow yourself to grow amongst your peers, like a tree in the forest, you allow yourself to grow from a sapling into a giant sequoia tree, and now when you're fully mature, now you say, okay, now I know who I am, and now I'm willing to build a home. Now I'm ready to build a home. Now I'm ready to find out a partner that shares my values. But if you're going to do that at the age of 12 or 16, or sometimes at 42, when you're not mature enough and not emotionally evolved enough, then that could potentially lead to a case of divorce, because where you are right now is not where you're going to be then. I know this is an interesting idea, but you don't agree with me?
No, I don't. I think when you're 16, 15, 14, 16 years old, you're not looking to get married. It's not looking for your life mate. It's understanding what women are about or what girls are about. And if you wait until you're 25 years old and now you're ready to find your life, you have no idea how women think, what they're like.
And why is that necessary to know? Why is it necessary at 13 years old? Why, you have mother, you have sisters, you have cousins?
Your mother doesn't count. Trust me.
No, I'm just trying to understand, why is it necessary for a 13-year-old boy? How does it, you don't think that co-ed schools? That was a question. Which age? What?
Take 13 out of the equation.
Okay.
15,
18, 20.
18, I'm good with.
22.
18, I'm good with. No problem with 18. No problem.
Dating.
What?
With dating.
Dating, yeah. But I don't believe in recreational dating.
Well,
Just one second. I only believe in recreational dating after marriage. You absolutely no. I'm very serious about this.
And I tried that. Look what happened. I got divorced.
I just got a handsome new man.
Yeah, you should. And please go tell your wife that I believe that you have to date your wife after marriage.
Oh, your wife.
Because if you think, I know what you were thinking. Nah,
We were both thinking
yeah.
the same thing.
I want to tell you something. It's critical to recreationally date your wife after marriage, 100%. God forbid for your wife to feel that she was skewered or snookered into this position, and now there's no way out. God forbid. No, you have to date your wife. You have to show your wife that she's special, and that you love her more today than you'd ever loved her before. Every day. A guy comes over to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, your high holiday sermons were very, very special. Each sermon was better than the next. Yeah, each sermon is better than the next. Okay.
So how do you explain, having done divorce early in my career, that the percentage of divorce is basically consistent, whether you're Orthodox?
It's not. No, that's not true. That is not true, my friend. Even though it's going to be hard for me to argue with you as a professional in divorce. But I want to tell you, are you trying to tell me that in the frum community, divorce rates are the same as the secular non-Jewish community?
They're basically close.
Come on. Fact check, sir. I'm sorry, but I disagree respectfully. 50% of couples, more than 50% of couples get divorced, I think.
50% of couples get divorced
In the non-Jewish world.
Regardless of social, economic.
I'm not sure which frame of reference you're using here, but in the religious community, I can tell you amongst my own friends and peers, it's like less than 10%. I can tell my own friends. I mean, I know my wife, my friends, our social circles. If I'm not mistaken, last time I checked, in the Orthodox Jewish community, it's about 12%. Maybe in the Chabad community. Yeah, go ahead, take a look. Yeah.
Why do we act so surprised about divorce? Don't we understand that the whole journey are the challenges, the mistakes, and the perfection of who we're meant to be?
So the mistakes that we face are part of our journey, right? Right. And I agree with you. I think that's why we don't have to be afraid of divorce. And I love that enlightened depth that you bring to the table here, Jack, is that divorce, it's not a bad thing. Listen, you tried, it didn't work. So does that mean it was a mistake? No, it does not mean it's a mistake. That's what Jack is saying. It means that this is a stepping stone as part of your specific journey. Oh, Garrett is telling me here that it's approximately 9%.
Yeah, but you use marriage as a metaphor for chosen.
Yes, I did use marriage as a metaphor for
You
chosen.
used the wrong metaphor.
Why is that the wrong metaphor?
Why? because what you're saying is, yeah, there are mistakes. So the choice wasn't the correct one.
I gotta tell you, there's a guy telling me here. I can't
Can
resist
I
this
help
comment
you?
coming in here.
Can I
Yeah,
help you?
yeah, please. Jack's gonna save me.
It was not God's choice, it was man's choice.
Oh, that's right, man's choice. You have your soulmate, Rob. Every person has their soulmate. Before you were born, your soul was split into two parts, one placed into a male, one placed into a female. Now, whether you've picked that up or not depends on how conscious you are.
Free will.
Depends on free will. Sometimes you're going to pick the wrong person for financial reasons, or because of popularity reasons, or because of political reasons, or who knows what reasons, or all the wrong reasons.
Sometimes the choice of divorce is not a mistake because you have a child from it. So
Yeah, maybe that was the purpose. Exactly. Well said. By the way, there's somebody come and tell me over here that there's a human being who is God manifested in the flesh. My friend, I'm so sorry to tell you, but this is the definition of idolatry. That is the definition of idolatry. To say that God, we don't even have icons, even pictures of God, because you can't even draw God. Never mind to say that a human being, a flesh and blood, is God. My friend, I'm really sorry, but this is a Jewish setting here, right? You know that, right? So unless you're trying to teach us something, this is it's idolatry. It is idolatry. It's the first two of the 10 commandments. You shall have one God, and you shall not have any idols. Having praying to a human being is unfortunately considered idolatry. So maybe this is not the right setting for that comment, sir. Okay, good. Good. Let's keep on going now, guys. With that introduction, let's get into a little bit of a prayer. We have the opportunity to connect, to speak to the CEO. Let me ask you a question, guys. Let me ask you a question. What is the last time that you had a profound communication with God? Jack over here had one yesterday, I think it was, right? Think about this. When was the last time that you communicated with your wife? I think it was 1983. No, that's not the right answer. That's not the right answer. You should be speaking to the one who chose you all day, every day. Now we're going to talk about how to do that. Here we are. With that introduction, let's get into it. Page 297, the Mishnah says, Rabbi Gamliel says, every single day a person must pray. Every single day a person must pray. What is it that he must pray with? The middle of the page where it says Mishnah. Every single day a person must pray. The 18 blessings that make up the weekday Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei is the pinnacle of prayer. It's the 3 prayers that we pray every day. We discussed this last week. We had morning, afternoon, and evening. It's Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv. We've discussed it in this previous Talmud study, whether it corresponds to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or if it corresponds to the daily offerings in the temple. Great conversations we've had about this. But the point is that at the pinnacle of each prayer, there's an anatomy to every prayer, by the way. You don't just walk into your wife and say, serve me dinner. That's not a nice thing to do. You're supposed to say, my wife, I'm grateful for you. I love you. You're beautiful. You're special. You're very kind. You know, you're supposed to come in like a mensch. And at the end, you're supposed to say, by the way, what are we doing for dinner?
With my dinner.
Yeah, you know, you can throw that in later, right? So the 18 blessings is the requests that we request from God every single day, 3 times a day. These were formulated by the men of the Great Assembly. This is the Jewish people, the Sanhedrin, who came out of Iran in order to build the second temple about 200 years ago, right after the Purim story. Mordechai, Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel. These are the leaders of the last 3 prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. These are the men of the Great Assembly that basically formalized and institutionalized Judaism 95% of the way that we know it today. And they formalized prayer, because until then people were praying extemporaneously. But from that moment on, they realized that people needed some templates. So they created the template of the 18 blessings, which gives us the 18 requests that every human being pretty much needs, okay? They make up the weekday Shemona Esrei. Now, I want to point out something very, very important. Some people tell me, and many people here in this community tell me, I asked them, no, so do you pray? You know what they tell me? Do you pray? Oh, good, fantastic. So I asked them, do you pray? And they say, Rabbi, I wouldn't ever pray for myself. I'll pray for my kids, for other people, but I'll take care of myself. And I try to explain to them that I think that that's a false premise. It's a fallacy, because God is your father, and God wants to hear from you. He actually wants to hear from you. God doesn't give us prayer so that we can solve our problems. God gives us problems so that we can pray. He actually gives us so that we will get his attention. Like, what would you do if you have a son that didn't call you more than once a year, what would you do? I think I said the story the other day. I got to say it again. It's a great story. So these three grandmothers in Fort Lauderdale, they're trying to figure out about the grandchildren. One that says, last time I heard from my sons was last Erev Yom Kippur. I'm hoping they're going to call me again this Erev Yom Kippur. The next one says, me too. It's a year since I heard from my grandchildren. The third one says, my kids call me every Jewish holiday, and they actually come visit. How did you do that? How do you pull that off? We give them gifts, and they still don't come visit. They don't even call. She says, I also give them gifts. I send them checks, but I forget to sign the checks. So they come visit. So God gives us unsigned checks. Why? It's a blessing, but it's like an unfinished blessing. You have a child, but the child's unhealthy. God forbid. We should never be tested, right? He gives us Israel, but you get a war with it. You get a Hezbollah, Hamas surrounding, right? You get an election that scares the living daylights out of you, right? So now you have what to pray for. Okay, so go for it. Now you got to go to daven. God is trying to get your attention, right? So let's discuss this idea. The Mishnah on 298. The Mishnah teaches that the Shemona Esrei contains 18 blessings. The Gemara asks, these 18 blessings, to what do they correspond? The Gemara answers, Rabbi Hillel, the son of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, said, the 18 blessings correspond to the 18 holes of the golf course. I'm joking, no. Correspond to the 18 mentions of God's name. To the 18 mentions of God's name that David said in Tehillim chapter 29. Ooh, that's interesting. Give unto Hashem, you sons of the powerful. So in Psalms 29 of King David, there are 18 mentions of the name of God, and that's where it comes from. Interesting. Rabbi Yosef said, the 18 blessings correspond to the 18 times God's name appears in the Shema. Ooh. That is 11 times the name Yud Ke Vav Ke Havaya, and 7 times some form of the word Elohim. Rabbi Tanchum said in the name of Rabbi Shimon Levi, the 18 blessings correspond to the 18 vertebra in the spine. Spine. What would be the connection between 18 prayer requests and your spine? And why do I need all the vertebra in my spine? When do you feel your vertebra? Well, whenever you feel a part of your body that you shouldn't be feeling, it's not a good sign. Yesterday I was building the sukkah and I pulled something in my back. I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful for the times when I don't feel that pain, But the vertebra,
Wait till you get old.
The vertebra, when you bow in humility, that's when you feel the vertebra, right? When you bow, when you're straight up, you don't feel the vertebra, right? So I think that there's a connection here between the 18 vertebra of the spine and humility. Because what?
In 29 is 18 mentions of God's name.
That's what you just said.
But there's also a kale, so there's 19 blessings.
Really? It's like a bonus one. It's a bonus mention of God. Fantastic. Good. What do you like? Google on Tehillim you? Good. Thanks. Okay, so when I think the connection with the spine is the spine represents humility. Now we've spoken about this idea at length before. It's a very, very beautiful idea, which is in the beginning of creation, when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, they had absolutely everything that they needed. They had no financial worries. They didn't have to worry about interest rates, bad neighbors. They didn't have to worry about, loans and credit cards and mortgages. It was just like, whatever you needed, you had at trees of the Garden of Eden, right? But what happened? Oh, Daniel the trucker is with us. Nice to see you, man. Okay, so what happened is that the moment that they ate from the fruit of the plant of higher consciousness, the moment they ate from the fruit of the plant of higher consciousness, of intimacy with good and evil, they immediately became self-aware. What was the first thing they did after they ate from the fruit of the plant of higher consciousness? They covered up their nakedness with a loincloth, right? Because they became self-aware. Until then, they had no sense of self. The plant of higher consciousness of good and evil was an introduction, an intimate connection with ego. And that's why the consequence, not the punishment, the consequence of eating that fruit was by the sweat of your brow shall you eat bread for the man. And what was the curse for the woman? The pain of what?
Childbirth.
It's not just childbirth, by the way.
Menstrual cycle.
Menstrual, but also raising those kids. Little kids, little problems. Big kids, big problems, right? Right? It's the trauma of raising kids, right? So basically what happens here is, as a result of the sin of introducing ego, we suddenly have what happened to us. We find ourselves completely occupied for the rest of not just our lives, like for the rest of the next 5 millennia with running around our kids like herding cats, and then with the difficulty of making a living. And what does the difficulty of making a living do to a person? It makes you humble, right? So the purpose of the consequence, again, not the punishment, the consequence of the introduction of ego into our being is that from now on, we're going to have ego mitigating measures. Ego mitigating measures that are going to be there in order to humble us, right? Now, these ego mitigating measures are divinely ordained, and they could come in the form of money, childhood, health issues, fear from anti-Semitism, fear from financial insecurity, fear from health. Could come in the form of Hamas, Hezbollah, or potentially your political nemesis rising to the top of the ticket. Heaven help us, right? This is all ego mitigating measures in order to humble the ego that we introduced willingly into our being by the counsel of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Now, what does this tell you about prayer? Now that we're learning of his profound, beautiful idea that the 18 blessings of prayer correspond to the 18 vertebrae of the spine, as if that's important. The idea is that if you can feel your spine, it means that you're bowing before God. If you can feel your spine, it means that you're humbling yourself before God, which perforce means that God does not need to humble you with health, wealth, war, or other mitigating concerns, ego mitigating endeavors. You don't need that. I mean, look at Chuck. Chuck over here had a problem, right? He was living a life. He didn't have any clue about God, didn't have a relationship with God. And suddenly one day, God zaps him like with lightning strike, right? And bam, he like rises to higher consciousness. This guy's like become awake. Just finished the whole Tanya, this guy. It's amazing. I'm so unbelievably moved by your effort and your devotion, your commitment. He answered the call. God called him and he answered the call, didn't drop this call. There was a medical crisis that he endured and he heard the message and he's here. So God willing, he's not going to need any more alarms, any more crises, right? Right? When we are able to humble ourselves before God, then God doesn't need to humble us from the outside, when we can humble ourselves on the inside, right? And that's what I believe that Rabbi Tanchum is saying in the name of Rabbi Shimon Levi, that the reason for the 18 blessings is corresponding to the 18 vertebra of the spine. Take a look at note 17. As for the relationship between the vertebra and prayer, Jerusalem Talmud connects 18 vertebra to the Gemara as follows, which says that a person must bow down until the vertebra of the spine protrude, right? So in other words, that's how much you're supposed to bow down, okay? Let's take a look at the notes inside E at the bottom of the page. The Gemara mentions 3 opinions regarding what the 18 blessings of the silent Amida correspond to. Maharal, the Maharal of Prague. Anybody been to Prague here?
Yes.
Oh, you've been to Prague.
Yeah.
My son was just there. So the Maharal of Prague was the great rabbi of Prague. Leah, good morning from Crown Heights. Nice to see you. The golem guy, yeah. He was the guy that created the golem because in the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, the anti-Semites would blame the Jews for any missing person. They would blame the Jews for ritual murder. They would blame the Jews for eating blood into their matzah or some weird stuff. So he created a golem, which was basically an Elon Musk prequel. It was a robo-human that would protect the Jewish community, patrol the streets of the Jewish community of Prague, and he's still interred right now in the roof, in this attic, in the attic of the Alt Neuschel, where you're not allowed to go anymore because of interesting stories that happened up there. Anyways, here's what Maharal says. He's a great Kabbalist. Maharal was my grandfather, by the way, 15 generations ago. The Maharal deals with these 3 opinions at length, touching upon Kabbalistic concepts. We're in the bottom here. Touching upon Kabbalistic concepts that are beyond the scope of this work, we present you on a simple level some of his analysis. Here's what the Maharal Prague. Now, if he's able to create an Elon Musk prequel humanoid, then when he talks about Kabbalah, the guy knows what he's talking about. Let's see what he says. There are 3 general ways in which we can appeal to God to fulfill our needs. The 3 opinions mentioned here in the Talmud reflect a direct way. Each reflect a direct way of appeal. The 3 ways, though, are complementary. Each one is a different aspect of prayer. What are the 3 ways? We said the 3 mentions of God's name. The second opinion was, the 3 mentions of God's name in Psalms 29. The second one was the 18 mentions of God's name in Psalms 29. The second opinion was the 18 mentions of God's name in the Shema. And the third one was the 18 vertebrae of the spine, right? So what does that mean? That sounds like a little random. According to Rabbi Hillel, the son of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, the first opinion, the 18 blessings of the silent Amida, Shemona Esrei, correspond to the 18 times that God's ineffable name is mentioned in Psalms 29. This name represents God's attribute of mercy. We appeal to God because he is the exalted, merciful one, and we have no claim on him other than his mercy. This is very, very important. A lot of people come to prayer and they say, God, you owe me. They come in and they say, God, you owe me this. The Talmud cautions us, don't ever do that. Don't ever say to God, you owe me, because if you really want an audits never go well. Nobody ever asked willingly for an audit, right? You don't want an audit because as a mortal human being, you probably have some imperfection somewhere that you probably slipped your mind. So don't ask for that. We always we pray to God out of mercy, out of kindness, to say, God, I'm asking you for this because you're my father, out of rahmanas, out of mercifulness, not out of what I deserve. Because if you want tit for tat, it ain't going to go well. The second one, according to Rav Yosef, the 18 blessings correspond to the 18 appearances of God's name. To the 18 appearances of God's name in the Shema, with whose reciting we accept upon ourselves the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. The Shema is about covering our eyes. We cover our eyes and say, look, why do we cover our eyes when we say the Shema? The declaration of faith. Because we say, God, I can't see, but I still believe. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you're doing this war. I don't know why you're doing things the way you're doing them, but I still am declaring Hashem Echad, one God, monotheism. Faith is the ability to see the light with your heart when all your eyes see is darkness. So according to Rav Yosef, this is the meaning of the 18 blessings corresponding to the names of God in Shema, which is associated with accepting the yoke of heaven. He is our king and we are his faithful subjects. It is the way of a king to provide the needs of his faithful subjects, and we appeal to God in prayer on this basis as well. We say, God, look, I'm asking you to help me only because we're connected. Not because I deserve it, but because I'm your humble servant. That's it. The third source of 18 is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Levi, who says that the 18 blessings correspond to the 18 vertebrae of the human spine. The spine is what gives a man his height and stature. And by bowing until all the vertebrae of the spine protrude, a man demonstrates the absolute submissiveness of a servant to his master. And it's this complete submission before him that is our greatest appeal to his mercy. Now, this is a very interesting concept, folks, that there's nothing that is more repellent to God's presence than ego. And there's nothing that is more of a lightning rod. That lightning rods draw lightning, right? Am I right? There's nothing more that attracts godliness like humility. No, so idolatry would be ego, right? That there's more than one God. This God, that God, the other God, my God, I am God, right? That's ego. Ego is separation from God, right? But humility is what draws God. There's actually a beautiful Rashi, verse we're coming up in the Torah in 2 weeks' time. When we read about the flood of Noah, it talks about the generations of Noah, the generations came after Noah. And it says over there that lists all these names, and their children. One of them had more children than anybody else, like miles more kids than anybody else. His name was Yaktan. Yaktan. Does anybody know what the root of the word Yaktan is? Yaktan is Katan. What's Katan? Small. And Rashi points out, why did he merit to have more than anybody else? More God's speed, more God's blessing, more fertility than anybody else? Because he made himself small. Because he humbled himself before God. Friends, I want to encourage you to embrace and take ownership of the 18 blessings of the silent Amida. If you have no time to pray, now that itself needs to be discussed, but let's assume that for whatever reason you have no time to pray. Then if nothing else, take the 18 blessings of the Shema, of the silent Amida, and pray them at least once a day. If you have the blue sitter, it's on page 45. Page 45. And what you do is you just read it. It goes from page 45, if you want to write this down somewhere. Oh, you remember that? Wow, look, you're 54, yeah. 45 to 54. Thank you, Mark. Wow. So what you do is you just want to read it. It's got 18 requests. And you humble yourself before God. And you say, God, I'm asking you, who else are you going to ask? You're going to ask President of the United States? You can ask your governor, your lieutenant, your mayor. Who are you going to ask? Your wife? Who are you going to ask? God Almighty is the most powerful being, is the exclusive power of our lives. You should appeal to him. He gave you the gift of communication. So ask him. Talk to God. And I want to encourage you, the way we do it is like this. When we do the silent prayer, we stand humbly before God. We stand with our feet together as opposed to separated. We put our feet together. Why is that? Because just like angels, the prophecies tell us that they have one leg. What does it mean they have one leg? It means that angels can't progress. They have 2 feet, you can progress. When you have one leg, you're rooted to the spot. Without getting too technical right now, angels they can't reinvent themselves like human beings can reinvent themselves. Think of the rabbit and the tortoise. Remember that story, the rabbit and the tortoise. So the rabbit's sleeping, right, and the tortoise reaches the finish line first because he creeps slowly, right? So the angels are rooted to the spot; they can't progress. But human beings are behind them, but they ultimately are able to achieve far greatness, right? So angels are humble before God. They have one leg. They can't reinvent themselves. So we stand before God with our feet together like angels. We say it silently because it's out of humility. We actually take 3 steps backwards beforehand as if to leave our current reality, and 3 steps forward as if to enter a new dimension. We're entering into the private space with God. And when you do that, you're saying the 18 blessings and try to bow. You'll notice certain parts of the Amidah at the beginning and at the end. You want to bow. And when you bow, try to feel those 18 vertebrae of your spine. Try to sense your humility before God and try to feel subsumed within the light of God's benevolent and almighty kindness. And if you can do that, then this day is not going to be a day that's going to need to give you a patchin panim. You know what that is, Marty? You speak English? A patchin panim, right? A frask, right? You won't need a frask because you're pre-frasked. You don't need to get a frask because you're already humble before God, right? So if you're able to do that, I want to encourage you, Mark. Also, you have certain parts of prayer that you try to highlight. Chuck, you too. Try to take that part of prayer. If you come to shul late, you come to shul early, maybe you're not initiated, you're not familiar with the prayer, you're not so comfortable with it. Walk into shul like Chuck. You come in, right? When you come in, take page 45 and make it your own. Own it. Perfect. Go to page 45 and own it. Make it your thing. You have to come in and sit and wait and look. You could just do your own thing. You sit in shul, you stand, feet together, 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, and you read the silent Amidah. And if you can do that, God willing, it's going to cover all bases. Don't have much time to go further than that, but I'm going to stop it over here, guys. Thank you very much. Any comments coming in? If God, okay. Great. Good stuff, guys. Nice chatting with everybody here. Thank you for joining me here. Have a great day.
Rabbi, why don't we do the